Hi everyone, this is Dr. Tom O'Brien. Thank you so much for your comments about the book, our book, You Can Fix Your Brain. And our publisher has sent us some questions that they've received. So I'm going to answer a few questions here. First question. I looked up in the United States, around 1% of people suffer from celiac. In South Korea, the reported number of celiac disease patients is much lower. If this results from genetic differences, can it be there are differences in the mechanism with which wheat affects brains for Asian people? Good question. No difference in the mechanism of how it affects brains. No. You do not have to have celiac disease. Non-celiac wheat-related disorders is much, much more common than celiac disease. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I just did a talk this weekend for about 400 doctors, and I said, how many of you know or suspect you have a sensitivity to wheat? Raise your hand, please. And 90% of the room raised their hand. About 90% of the room. I said, look around the room. And they did. They went like this. And I said, that's your practice. That's how common wheat is a problem. This was not a talk to a celiac group where everyone has a problem. This is a talk to doctors. And 90% of you, ballpark, 90% have that problem. So that's how common it is. And it's, so celiac is not the issue. That's a component of a wheat-related disorder, an important component, but the topic of wheat-related disorders is much more prevalent than that. Is there any ongoing research in the field of functional medicine that looks at the difference between Asians and Westerns, given that there are genetic differences? Absolutely, absolutely. We know now, thanks to Professor Alessio Fasano at Harvard, that there are 5 steps in the development of most autoimmune diseases, at least 5 steps that begin years before you ever have a symptom, but you're slowly killing off cells, killing off cells, killing off cells, and eventually you get the problems. What are those 5 steps? First, you have to carry a gene for a sensitivity to a particular food, like wheat or dairy, or but all humans have a problem with wheat. All humans. No human can digest wheat completely. No human. So first is a genetic sensitivity. Second is being exposed to that environmental trigger, whatever it is. In this discussion, wheat, but it could be dairy or soy or any other. Third, altering the microbiome, the good guys in your gut that are there to protect you. 70% of the immune system's in your gut. And the reason for that is because that's where more potential danger is than anywhere else. The action in your gut in one day trying to protect you is more than the action in your bloodstream over your entire life. That's how active the gut is. Okay, so first was the genes, second is exposure to the substance, third is altering the microbiome, fourth is intestinal permeability develops, what's called the leaky gut. And fifth, your immune system in the bloodstream gets activated to protect you, producing antibodies that because of something called molecular mimicry, you'll read about it in the book, molecular mimicry, the antibodies to dairy attack your brain. The antibodies to wheat attack your skin or your heart or your lungs or your liver. The antibodies to soy attack the myelin, that's a saran wrap around your nerves or many other tissues. So the 5-step process is the mechanisms in the development of autoimmune disease. That's why someone comes in and they're losing their hair. It's called alopecia. You of course want to give them something so they feel better, or if they have arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, you want to reduce the pain, but that's not the treatment. That's just the Band-Aid. You have to figure out what aspect of the 5 mechanisms that got them eventually to the point of this autoimmune condition, which one of these, and usually it's all of them, which one of these do I have to take a look at? That's functional medicine. Now you give them something to feel better so they don't have joint pain with arthritis, but then you've got to go back and look at the 5 mechanisms. You said in the book to avoid whey protein, but some of the recipes in the book include whey protein. Should we consume whey protein? Good question, really good question. And that's because the recipes come from my friends. I asked my friends, I said, give me one recipe for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that's gluten-free, dairy-free. Apparently a couple of them didn't do that. gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free. And so you've got multiple approaches and recipes here. But the thing about whey protein, there's something called the biological value of a food. If I take in 50 grams of protein, and if the protein's from eggs, eggs are called the perfect food. And the reason is because they have a 100% biological value, meaning I'm going to absorb 50 grams into my body and build new cells and new muscle cells and bone cells from that protein from eggs. 100% biological value. The biological value of beef is in the low 70%, meaning I eat 50 grams of protein from beef, 30% of it I'm not going to get. So that's going to be about 15 grams. So that means 35, I'll get 35 grams of the 50. The rest of it your body can't use. Now with beans, it's in the 50 to 60%. Fowl, like chicken, is in the 60 to 70% in there. So biological value is really important. That's why when you eat beans, you always mix it with rice, because it increases the biological value when you do that. So whey happens, the biological value of whey is 104%. You get more protein when you eat whey than anything else. If you do not have a sensitivity to dairy, then whey is a good thing to include in your diet. But most people do have a sensitivity, so we just across the board start with gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. Is there any relationship between gluten and acne? I like bread and noodles, and since last year I'm suffering from acne and folliculitis. Yes, there is. And I'm going to share my screen with you here because I thought I'd pull up this article for you. And the title of the article is Cutaneous, that means skin, manifestations in celiac disease. And what do they tell us here? Here are all the different skin conditions that can come about when you have a sensitivity to wheat. Psoriasis and vitiligo and porphyria and alopecia, losing your hair. The list goes on and on and on. And acne is one of the common ones that you can see. So the answer is yes. Koreans routinely eat spicy and salty foods. What are your thoughts on this? It's really interesting that warm climates often have spicy food. Cold climates don't have as much spicy food. Why is that? Because the spices kill parasites. And your ancestors knew they had to eat a fair amount of these spicy foods regularly because it would kill parasites. So cumin and turmeric and garlic and chilies and I don't know all the spices in your foods, but they kill parasites. So absolutely, spices are great to include in your meals and can help protect you and protect your gut. I do swimming. The book mentions that it's better to remove chlorine from water, so does it mean that I'm better off switching to different sports? Or is it okay to just take a thorough shower after swimming? No. If you have a sensitivity to chlorine, you need to avoid chlorine because it inhibits your thyroid function. And how do I do that? How do you know if you have a sensitivity? You do a blood test to see, look for antibodies. But if you can't do a blood test for some reason, here's a suggestive indicator. When you're in an elevator in a hotel, if the elevator door is open, can you tell the swimming pool's on that floor right away? Oh, yeah. Can anyone else comment? No one else smells it, but I smell it. You're likely sensitive to chlorine. So get chlorine out of there if you have a sensitivity to chlorine and expect that it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. I wonder whether we can use microwave ovens, which use electromagnetic fields. Really good question. The answer is no, not for food. We use microwave ovens. We put our sponges from the kitchen sink, when we're wiping down the kitchen sink, we put the sponges in the microwave for 1 minute to 2 minutes. It kills everything. So it kills bacteria, it kills everything. But when you put your food in there, it kills your food. It's dead food. There's still vitamins and fiber and some minerals in there, but there's no enzymes. There's no life force whatsoever. It thoroughly kills all the life force in the food. So you want to avoid that whenever you can. Okay, folks. Hope this was helpful, and thank you once again. Please share this book with your family and friends. Many people give it as a gift. And you know, it's not because I wrote it or because it's #1 in 7 categories in Amazon, which is very cool, but it's because when people learn this information, they get healthier. They get healthier. So please pay it forward. Thank you so much, and good life.